When we were first elected, there was something like a 19.5-year difference in healthy lifetime, which was horrific. And some of the maps I've seen of health inequalities, and they match the deprivation levels of the different wards. So if we can do things to reduce that, that will make Darlington healthy.
Before, politics was done to people and planning was done to people.
Yeah.
And these communities from all different backgrounds, in all different parts of the town that were directly affected by this local plan, were a bit amazed and then very thankful that Green councillors and Green Party members were welcoming them and training them and teaching them. And that has paid back, because we now have informed, empowered local communities who are no longer going to take it from the council.
If your question is ignored, keep banging your head against or go round that wall or under it.
For a ward that was the strongest Conservative ward in the whole of Darlington Borough, they nearly have to just weigh the vote. It's massive. And there are people now who call themselves Green.
Yeah.
And that's the shift. They see the hard work. They see the fact that we're not dreamers, we're not hippies. We genuinely are hardworking, we care about them, and we care about their community.
There's a quiet change happening in the northeast. The sense of hope that's in the air, that's growing, I would say. And hopefully that will continue to grow. I'm Jonathan Elmer. This is Greens Rising. And I'm really delighted to be able to welcome two guests onto the podcast today. This is Matthew Snedker and Bryony Holroyd. They're both the councillors for the College Ward in Darlington, elected 6 years ago now. Brilliant. And of course, Matthew and Bryony were the vanguard of Greens entering into politics on Darlington Council. And since you've been followed, I think there's 6 councillors in total now. Lovely to meet you both. What made you get into politics?
Well, I've been involved with environmental campaigning for quite some time, and social justice. The idea that when you screw up the planet, you screw up people's lives, basically. So I'd been very energised by the anti-apartheid movement when I was growing up. I was very aware that pollution through DDT or pesticides were causing birth defects in children. And then when I had children, I wanted my kids to be able to cycle to school. I got fed up with holding placards outside asking the wrong people to make the right decision. And I decided, let's get the right people elected. And that sounds the right way to do it. So lo and behold, formed the Green Party. And a matter of a few years later, very hard work, few years, but a few years later, Bryony and I became the first ever Green councillors in Darlington Borough Council.
So, Bryony, coming to you, I know that you worked as an environmental scientist before getting into politics. Why did you decide to change from that career into something like this?
I trained as an environmental chemist, but I've always been aware of social justice issues. I mean, I remember when I was really quite little, talk about the boat people and people washing up on shores around the South China Sea and being pushed back out to sea to, no doubt, certain death. And going, I don't want to be in a world like that.
Yeah.
So for me, this is about, me changing the things that I hate about the world and making things a little bit different. And obviously we're starting in Darlington. But coming back to local, I lived in Darlington, but I never worked in Darlington. I always commuted out. I was working elsewhere. But I heard about council decisions and I kind of said, oh no, they've made yet another bad decision. I could do better than that.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I'd give it a go.
So, obviously, there's a big difference between the sort of big national, international issues that often motivate a lot of us to the sort of politics we're engaged with at a local level that people really care about. And I know when I've been working in my ward and I knock on doors and ask people what's important to them, it's often quite mundane things that really bother people. But certainly my experience has been that tackling those mundane issues so people feel that I'm a valuable person and they've voted for me. What's been your experience in terms of community politics? What have been people's priorities in College Ward?
I mean, most recently, flooding. We are blessed with a ward that has lots of street trees and the leaves fall. And, austerity, we have not enough people trying to clear up all those leaves and gullies are getting blocked.
Yeah.
But, we have had people who live in basement apartments or people with cellars that have flooded.
It's more than the leaves, though. This is, again, the value of having green councillors, because I think within the Council of Darlington, all the other groups acknowledge quite openly the Greens work hardest. Conservative and Labour councillors said to me, you lot never stop. You're always working. What we've done is we've looked beyond it's the leaves, isn't it? We've looked beyond that, and we're getting hydrostatic studies done by Northumbrian Water Limited. We're holding them to account. We're engaging with officers who are actually so happy that there are councillors that, one, are engaged, two, have got a bit of knowledge and are prepared to back them against the big companies that will just brush them away and say it's your problem.
But what you're saying to me is that even with the smaller issues, you've been dealing with them in a strategic approach.
Yeah, definitely. The officers reached out to us and said, help, we are struggling to get a response from Northumbrian Water.
Yeah.
So Matthew had some contacts from his work on the Northeast Regional Flood, the alphabet soup. He used his contacts to get a meeting, but we basically worked as a pincer movement with the officers to say, look, we need you to clean out this, monitor that location. And they've admitted that there's some work that needs doing there. They've got some monitoring in place now. So we haven't got a solution yet. But also we have pushed the officers to say, look, where there's a particular road that frequently floods, that it is a topographic issue, that there's not enough drainage there. So they have got plans in place. Whether they can get funding to enact those plans is the next problem. But, we are
But it makes a difference.
pushing things along.
I've noticed myself that just asking the question, putting a little bit of gentle pressure on people, tends to get results. Yeah. And if you just ignore it, then nothing ever happens.
But if your question is ignored, keep banging your head against or go round that wall or under it.
I know also that as councillors, as a Green group on Darlington Council, over the last 5 years, you've managed to accomplish some quite big things as well. So if you were to think about your big achievements over that period, what would you say that they are?
Yeah, undoubtedly the Climate Change Emergency Declaration, which we got, a unanimous vote twice on that because we got it renewed, both when it was a Conservative-led council and then when it was a Labour-led council. Both were coalitions. Now, the assistant directors, those sort of upper echelons of the council, on their yearly KPIs, their key performance indicators, at their annual review, are you making significant progress on climate change targets, is built into their job description.
Yeah.
And now we've added to that with a nature restoration emergency motion, which, again, with the most nature-depleted country in Europe, Jonathan, I have to tell you, because I know that you're a national spokesperson on the natural world, but what I've learnt is that you meet people where they are. So for a lot of councillors, the idea that Darlington's a more attractive place to do business, a more attractive place to live, a healthier town if there's more nature around you, that floats their boat. Others, they really love seeing wildlife and having a place to walk their dog that's green and pleasant.
Absolutely.
So meeting our colleagues, not in our group, and selling it to them. So those two are really big examples. There are others I know Bryony's going to talk about. My passion for active travel has meant that I've really changed the attitude of some key officers in the Highways Department to be more open to looking at different ways of doing things.
What was the situation before that, though? What was their tendency?
The tendency was car is king. The tendency is we've got to keep the cars moving. Never talk about people. Never talk about people getting away. It's cars. Yeah. There's a congestion there. We'll just widen the road. We'll take off that grass verge. We'll demolish those trees. We'll take out a house. Make the roundabouts bigger. Get the cars go vroom, vroom, fast. And what I've talked about now is, what are you trying to achieve? What are the goals for people? And so I'll stop at those three and let Bryony come in with the other things that you've done there.
Yes, indeed. So for me, I'm actually going right back to, I started it before we were even elected. Yeah. I couldn't say it resulted in a huge success in terms of changes, but it was a success in a community sense, in that Darlington was writing its local plan and we didn't really know much about it. But what do they say about teachers? You just have to know 5 minutes before the people you're going to teach. So we worked it out between us and with the community. Basically, there were lots of people in the community, whether parish councillors, interested community groups, just individuals, who were passionate about wanting to have their say and making sure that Darlington was doing the right thing in planning terms for sustainability. So we fundraised with groups to get a independent planning assessment of our local plan. I contacted various organisations because there was no mention of renewable energy.
Mm-hmm.
And in a local plan, it says if you don't mention wind, for example, that effectively bans wind from your area completely. So I was like, we need to have some mention of this in somewhere. Otherwise, we're basically banning any
You've got
wind
no
turbines.
policy in support of it.
Yeah, exactly. So I contacted various renewable energy organisations, and the Centre for Sustainable Energy came back and said, actually, we've got some dregs of government funding. We can assess your whole local plan for sustainability. I went, oh, yes, please. So we got this. I mean, it was a minority report. It was requested by me.
Yeah.
And I obviously sent it to the planners and went, look, this is their assessment. Can you please build this in? And it pretty much got ignored. But, that was work that we were hammering away with our tiny little pick to try and get this change and be open and push them to do better.
Yeah.
But also we were supporting the community at the same time. We had, it was mostly online because much of it was being done at the time of COVID. So we had a lot of Teams meetings and Zoom meetings, and basically supporting people to understand the process of how they fed into the local plan, how they could comment, when they had to comment, and supporting them as to how to do that, because many of them would not otherwise have been able to comment.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Brian. I'll just add in, for the benefit of our viewers, a local plan, all councils have them, and these are the council-owned documents, if you like. They have a list of planning policies in them, and it's on the basis of those policies that councillors and the council make planning decisions. So whether or not houses are built, fact, all that sort of thing.
And it's for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
But in Darlington, because they're planning some really huge, we have 3 garden villages in Darlington. So they're planning until 2040
It's a
beyond.
really key council responsibility where it's been notoriously difficult for residents to actually feel they're properly engaged with it.
And those residents have said to us, thank you for helping us. And many of them since joined the Green Party, but that wasn't why we were doing it.
Yeah.
But they really appreciated that we would support them on a non-party political, non-partisan basis to get the right outcome for their community. And bearing in mind, development all around the north of Darlington was planned. So we had people from all over and just teaching them how to go through the process and how to make which points were kind of valid in planning terms and that sort of thing. It's really, planning is very technical.
Absolutely.
And keeps we ordinary citizens out as much as
Brian,
possible.
don't sell yourself short, because you said, we didn't really change the local plan work.
We did get some changes.
We did get significant changes, but far more than that. As Bryony said, we were being non-partisan and we were welcoming members of the community in before politics was done to people and planning was done to people.
Yeah.
And these communities from all different backgrounds in all different parts of the town that were directly affected by this local plan were a bit amazed and then very thankful that Green councillors and Green Party members were welcoming them and training them and teaching them. And that has paid back, because we now have informed, empowered local communities who are no longer going to take it from the council
down.
And so that is rolled on. So 6-7 years on, we now have community groups. They're not Green Party, but they are engaged and they are really, really focused on doing the right thing.
It's all going to come back round because local plans have to be renewed every 5 years.
That's right.
So we're just coming up to the renewal. So if you like, we've got a lot of stuff
And there's
prepared already.
6 of you now.
There's now 6. And what's great about having 6 is that we can now form a shadow cabinet. And so obviously the council is run on a cabinet system. Boo hiss, we're not allowed to have a committee system because that's far too grown up. But when we too became councillors and Labour were in opposition, they were a bit shocked. And we were trying to cover all the briefs. So we had all the papers that came, we'd split them down the middle and we'd read them like video. I'd get up early, Bryony would stay up late, and we'd be on top of the game. Now we've got the 6 councillors. It is lovely that resources, economy, health and housing, young people, adults, they are now taken care of by another 5 wonderful Green councillors.
Yeah.
And we formally announce our shadow cabinet. The Conservatives don't formally announce their shadow
I don't
cabinet.
think they would have had a shadow cabinet.
We've just mentioned housing in the list of those responsibilities.
Yeah.
Now, that's actually leading on to my next question, because I know that you, Matthew, are the new Green Party national spokesperson for housing.
Housing and communities.
Housing and communities. So, how does that translate into what's happening in Darlington? What are the housing needs of Darlington?
Very similar to the housing needs around the country. I always think that having a good income, a good house and good friends leads to a good life. And in that brief that I'm covering at the moment, there's two of those, good housing and good communities where you get your good friendship from. So everyone, I think, is familiar with the cost of living crisis, but we've got a cost of housing crisis, which is led from... we basically stopped building social housing in the country. Darlington still owns a lot of social housing, council housing. We're improving that council housing, not as fast as I'd like. I know it's why I push officers to apply for grant funding. But also, we are building new council houses. The housing revenue account is funding that. We're building it to an OK standard. But again, I'm talking to colleagues in York about going to the best standards that is viable.
Yeah.
That was a policy brought in by Green councillors in York and is now being adopted by the Labour administration in York. And the other one is about when local authorities commission their own housing, they can build a community. They have total control over where the roads are, where the green spaces are, where we leave space for shops, bus routes, etc.
Just to stop you a moment, this, I feel, is a huge issue nationally. The idea that the bulk housing providers are really calling the shots. They have such influence over the plan-making process, but also, as we now know, they really have captured that aspect of policy making at a national level over the Labour Party.
Definitely. You know, that leaked memo that said that Labour were really wanted to make sure that housing policy lands favourably with the mass house builders.
Yeah.
They were more concerned about the profits of a few big corporations than the millions of people who are desperately struggling to meet their housing costs week in, week out. And that's where I take inspiration from, Red Vienna and places like the Munich local plan, where local government is the commissioner of place. They design a community and then go to market and say, who wants to build this? So that is a fundamental change we need to make.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to sort of bring it back to local, hyper-local stuff now. Now, you two are the ward councillors for the college ward. Yeah. Do you work together well? Do you have to do a sort of bit of a double act? Does the fact that there's two of you take the pressure off each other?
Yes, we often do a double act. I mean, we've mentioned flooding. We do a pincer movement. I mean, Matthew leads on active transport because he's worked and campaigned in that sector before, but it's something I'm passionate about as well. I kind of lead on the housing stuff in Darlington because I used to work in the fuel poverty and sustainability sector. Matthew will learn from me, and in terms of casework, we'll pick stuff up. And,
coming onto casework, Bryony, how do you make sure that the work you're doing is actually aligned with what people say is important to them?
Well, they contact us with an issue and we work on it and we solve it. So, it's that simple. We also do what we call street surgeries. So we'll take like a sixth of our ward and we deliver a letter the week before saying we're going to be in your area on this Saturday morning. Yeah. Matthew calls it the Santa Stop Here sign because basically it's a letter with a stop sign on the other side. So they just stick the back of the letter up on their door or window. So we don't have to bother the people who don't want to be seen. And we would talk to the ones who do.
The world is cluttered up so much now with different channels of communication. So how do you choose to report back to residents?
I've talked about meeting people where they are. That isn't just colleagues, it's about residents. We're getting a lot of casework on a certain topic. We maybe go back and speak to those people verbally on the phone, knock on the door, and then we convene a meeting with the relevant officers in the council and say, this is a common theme. We also speak to other councillors saying, are you getting this issue as well? So we have the weight of opinion behind us and we get change. But also there'll be things emerging in our policy area as greens.
Yeah.
So when it comes to renewable energy, there are people in our ward who are owner-occupiers, and they want to know whether they can get solar panels or heat pumps. There are people in our ward who would like their kids to be able to walk or cycle to school. And again, we have green policies. So it's not that we rewrite the policy, we just reframe it. And what we're getting now is for a ward that was the strongest Conservative ward in the whole of Darlington Borough, they nearly have to just weigh the vote. It's massive. And there are people now who call themselves Green.
Yeah.
And that's the shift. They see the hard work. They see the fact that we're not dreamers, we're not hippies. We genuinely are hardworking. We care about them and we care about their communities.
No offence to hippies.
None at all. None at all.
I was just going to mention, and I know it's something Matthew's been pushing on for a long time. I know you've learnt from Caroline Russell in London about it. The residence parking zones and parking in general. We're close to the town centre, so lots of people come and park, and we have a sixth form college, so lots of students come and park. So it's really, parking pressure is quite heavy. And Matthew's been pushing to get a full review of like the residence parking zones and all the parking. And, you know, whether we can get any changes in charging so that people who have larger cars that do more damage to the road would pay more, things like that. People who have multiple vehicles, or whether there be a max and say you can have 2 residence parking permits per house only.
So it's all being reviewed.
So, there was public consultation on this and we made sure we publicised it heavily. And the council actually said that they were pleasantly surprised at the amount of response that they've got. And we're like, we want to know how much of it came from College Ward.
Well, it's also it's the other ward councillors as well, because Harriet Hill and Hummersnott as well have Green councillors. And we work with councillors to shape the questionnaire that went forward.
Can I ask you about the future now? I know you've got big plans for the future of the Darlington Group. What do you see yourselves achieving in the future for Darlington?
Well, we have a business plan, and for the next local elections in 2027, we will be fighting on new ward boundaries because we've had a boundary review internal to Darlington. But the key aim is to be the largest party in Darlington.
Yeah. So control the council.
That will,
in terms of decision making.
Yeah, because there's having overall control, so that's half the councillors plus 1.
Yeah.
But there's been the largest party.
Yeah.
At the moment, neither Labour nor Conservative over the past 6 years have had the majority of councillors. Our aim is to be the largest group on Darlington Borough Council, and yes, put us in the driving seat there.
What do you hope to achieve?
Well, what we'll be doing as much as we can, following the national policy procedure of investing money to provide a better society, more sustainable society, a society that needs less care and support. So, you know, producing a society where it is easier to be healthy, it's easier to be engaged, it's easier to be employed, it's easier to carry on your life. Basically, having a country that you can afford to live in again. And so doing the investment where it's needed, instead of sticking plaster, instead of waiting for things to go wrong and then having to spend a lot of money putting them right, providing a Darlington Borough where living is easier, more pleasant, and requires less intervention in that respect.
So it's cheaper as well as nicer and healthier. I mean, one thing about Darlington, it is one of the most unequal towns in the country. And when we were first elected, there was something like a 19.5-year difference in healthy lifetime. And, you know, some of the maps I've seen of health inequalities, and they match the deprivation levels of the different wards. Yeah. So if we can do things to reduce that, that will make Darlington healthier.
Because inequality being such a huge issue across the country, you're seeing it at a microcosm level.
Oh, definitely.
One community next to another. So there's a real possibility that you can improve levels of inequality just within Darlington.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you were talking about health and nature restoration. You know, the levels of green space in some of the poorest wards is really small.
Yeah.
And then you get, unsurprisingly, you get poor mental health. People don't have anywhere to go to like decompress when they need to.
I'm going to start winding up now, folks, but there's one final question and then I'll wrap up. An observation, really. We're seeing something really interesting in the polls, the national polls at the moment. We're seeing Greens in second place behind Reform. And the mainstream parties, Conservative, Labour, who would previously felt would dominate politics forever, are dissolving away. Yeah. What does that mean for your parliamentary ambitions of the local party?
Well, we see a pathway to Parliament before us. It's not an easy one, but we see it there. And Greens don't shirk from difficult jobs, let's be honest, Jonathan. So we see an opportunity for Darlington. I've been lucky enough to stand for Parliament. We doubled the vote, then nearly tripled the vote the last time I was out. for election, and we genuinely see the next general election to be fought between Reform and Greens.
Yeah.
It will be as clear cut as that.
Are you already finding that on the doorstep?
We asked Labour voters, are you happy with Labour? Only 11% thought that Labour was doing a good or very good job. We asked Labour and Conservative voters, would you like to see more Green councillors in Darlington? Would you like to see more Green influence in Darlington? 79% Labour, 75% of Conservatives said, yes, we want more Green parliamentary or councillors elected. This is a real turning point, that they have seen us mature into a party ready for power.
Yeah.
And I'm absolutely certain that we have a golden opportunity at the next general election.
And I think that the Labour politicians, and Conservative to a certain extent, it feels like they're just going la 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 la. When you speak to people and go, oh, I voted for X party all my life, but now I'm disgusted with them and I'm not going to vote. And we try to talk them round and encourage them to vote for hope, and that there is that possibility.
What's actually happened here is that people haven't left the Labour Party. The Labour Party's left them. It's drifted to the right. It's further right than any of us ever imagined would be. And of course, that's not where their voters are. Yeah. Who do we support? Who do we get behind now? Well, the Greens are certainly a party that can, I say, fill the gap. But
Greens have always been there. It's just more obvious now because Labour has left that space.
Those blue-collar Labour who are being tempted by reform. When you talk about the millionaire city boy who is Nigel Farage, who talks about cutting the wages for young people, that young people on £10 an hour are getting too much. When you talk about the fact that their reform candidate is an ex-Tory, they've stood for Tory election in the past. When you talk about you won't have an NHS left anymore, you can see the worry in their eyes. Our job, all of us, our job is to show them the hope that the Green Party offers them. And it's a brighter future by voting for the Greens as a way of saying they're done with politics as normal, rather than being tempted by the dog whistle politics of reform.
Well said. Any last words, Bryony, before we wrap up?
Just following on from Matthew, I mean, I saw some statistics that say many people who are tempted by reform, they're more likely to be people who are on benefits or pensioners. And I'm like, yeah, they've said one too many things about cutting benefits, making pensions means tested, that sort of thing.
Privatisation of the NHS.
Yeah, and it's trying to persuade those people, don't play with fire. I mean, it will be dangerous for them. I mean, I don't see how they would risk it, but I'm not there.
Well, I think a lot of people have been misled at the moment about the actual nature of danger that they face in the future.
I think many people are seeing reform as the only other option. So that's one thing that I'm really encouraged by the Greens coming up now and saying, no, we're the other option. We bring hope without that whole destruction thing. And we really want to bring those people with us and explain to people that, no, we think that there should be a safe level of benefits so that everyone can have a good, safe life, and they'll be warmer and healthier as well and have lower bills because we want to get rid of the privatisation and all of that. But we have to get out there and get busy.
I get that message out. So, Matthew, Bryony, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure
for coming in and talking to me today. This has been Greens Rising. There'll be another episode, so stick with us. You can look at the links below. You can subscribe. You can join the Green Party and be part of our movement for real hope and real change.